I wanna try and take in all the highs, embrace them for more than a moment's time. I want you, please don't move when I push you away. I know I contradict myself some days, but will you ride the lows with me?
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I am your host, Kristin Sunanta Walker. Our goal is to help discussions about mental health be a regular part of your daily life, no different than discussions about physical health. Mental illness can be a topic of discussion under the umbrella of mental health, along with so many other topics. This show is the original program on MentalHealthNewsRadioNetwork.com. Our network of shows are played in over 180 countries and cover more topics under that umbrella than you can possibly imagine. We were talking about mental health long before it became cool and popular to talk about, and thank goodness it has become so popular. We have incredible guests, advocates, patients, experts, people. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy our intro music, a song named Lows, written by Aubrey Toon. You can find her music at www.aubreytoone.com.
That night when I started praying, I cried, will you ride the lows with me? Will you ride the lows with me? When I'm down, my vision gets blurry.
Hi, listeners. I have a fantastic guest, also a new podcast. Well, he's not a new podcaster, but he's bringing his already existing podcast, That Infernal Noise, to the network. Robert Young, I'm so happy to have you with us.
I'm very happy to be here.
I was just telling you before the show how much our team has enjoyed working with you. So thanks for that, too.
Oh, yeah, it's been a pleasure. Like I was telling you, everybody's been real pleasant to work with and very patient with me as I'm going on this new adventure. So I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. It's funny. I mean, we are in mental health. And so I've noticed that. I mean, this isn't true for everybody, but more so than not, when you're in this field, you're kind of like, okay, that person was being rude, but maybe they're struggling with some kind of mental health challenge. So maybe I'm not going to just immediately get ticked.
Yeah, I've found that on this journey, I've been a little bit more patient, even with my professional life. I've been calmer and not as quick to react and be like, oh, it just haven't ruined my day. So I think it's beneficial.
I know it's a trip too when when you're depressed, you of course question everything. And I've certainly been there many, many, many times in my life. But it's kind of neat when you get to the point where you're like, yes, it's okay that I can't always trust my feelings or what I'm thinking to be true. And I'm not going to beat myself up about that. I'm just going to be okay with that.
Yeah, that's been a big problem for me as well. I was actually just talking to my therapist about that yesterday. I've had a lot of struggles personally with trying to differentiate the actual negative feelings from the ones that I'm making up. And,
yes.
And that is just such a big deal for me. And even just the past 6 months or so, I've really honed in on that and figured out exactly what my triggers are. And I have different feelings within my physical body to tell me, okay, that one, you're being a little ridiculous. You're overreacting. Ignore that one. Let's focus on reality for a second.
Yeah. And it's a trip to do that because there's so much climbing out of the drudge of your self-esteem being in the toilet to, okay, it's okay that I'm someone that struggles with these things, whatever they may be. And I like myself even through these horrible things that feel horrible that are going on. And I don't always have control over what I'm making up in my head.
Yeah, 100%. Most of mine, it stems from anxiety. So if like one tiny thing goes wrong, it's just a cascade downhill, and it's automatically, doomsday scenario, worst possible scenario type
Yeah.
thing. And it's just so overwhelming. And that was a lot of the catalyst for me pursuing the mental health and actually being active and trying to get better, because I
Yeah.
cannot do it anymore. Like, I'm 37 years old. I have 4 kids, and I can't teach them how to be healthy if they watch daddy fall apart all the time,
Right. Well, you're teaching them how to be human. I mean, my God, that's a thing. It's so hard in our society. We're supposed to be these perfect creatures that don't do anything wrong and live this social media perfect life.
Mhm.
And that is not reality. And so
Oh,
that's
no.
its own anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, the social media thing, that's a whole nother can of worms. It's just, you're watching
Oh,
all these
yeah.
people live this contrived life as opposed to what's real. And what's real is you don't see the struggle behind the scenes. They act like they're
Exactly.
living these big extravagant lives whenever they have $20 in the bank type thing. And you don't really
Right.
correlate those two. You just see what they present you, and that's it. Like, I want to do the opposite. I want to show people the struggles and show what
Exactly.
I'm going through, and show, hey, I'm human just like you. I have these moments. It's not fun and games. It's not, this is work. Like, I have to work at myself in order to get better.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, I just was telling someone that wants to bring or they want to do a podcast, and they're like, I have been listening to you for 8 years, my own show. And I was like, my first reaction was, oh no.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel whenever somebody tells me that they've been listening to mine. I'm like, oh, which one did you listen to? Did you listen to all of them? Oh, no, this is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, because like, those were, or I'll have somebody get really mad and comment on a show I did 5 years ago, and it triggered them in some way. And I was being not so great because I was in not a good place when I did that show, but they'll comment today, and I want to like go, I promise I'm different.
I've changed since then. I know I have. I've made so much progress.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could only do what you could do. But okay, so I love the name, That Infernal Noise, because that's what it is. It's the noise in your head, your own voice in your head that's going, that person just gave me a dirty look and they were rude, and so now they're Satan. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's 100% where it came from too. It's that dark little demon in the back of my head, and that's what I've always called it. Like, called it that for years, even before I started down this mental health journey. And it just, for some reason, that always resonated with me.
Yeah, I mean, I used to, there was a book, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a drawing of a woman with her head is like a big scribble and her hands are over her face. And I read it like when I was a teenager. It was a pivotal book for me. And my ex-husband would always say, that's you. Like, your mind is driving you crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
I'm
I've
like,
been right
yeah.
there. It's not, whenever you can't control it, it's not fun. And whenever you don't know what the triggers are, or if it's good, just come out of left field for no apparent reason. I mean,
Yeah.
that is so hard to control.
Or even well-meaning, very well-meaning people sometimes that are like, why are you depressed? What happened? And I'm like, that's the thing. Sometimes there's not anything that happened. It just is. And I'm just in it, and I'm doing, like, it's not a problem that needs to be fixed because I'm not broken. This is just something I deal with. So I know you're trying to find like what the reason is, but there isn't one.
Yeah, 100%. I went through that the day before Father's Day. As a matter of fact, I was sitting there with my family and my sister and her family, and it just, something snapped, and it just went downhill mentally for me. And there was no reason why. There was no catalyst for it. Nothing was said. There was nothing. And it turned into what it turned into. And I was just like, okay, I have to get away. I have to like try to decompress and work on my breathing techniques and
Yeah.
all that stuff just to feel some kind of normalcy in that moment.
I know. I literally just decided today, which, I mean, hello, this is going to sound so shallow, but whatever. I just decided today, you know what? I do better in my life. For my mental health, I need to have a housekeeper every week, and I'll eat ramen if I need to make that happen, because it's just works for me. It makes me feel good
Mm-hmm.
instead of all these years of what a lazy.
100%. Yeah. My wife and I have actually talked about that, where it's just maybe like once a month or something, just have a housekeeper come in and just clean the whole house. That way, for that 1 week or whatever, we don't have to worry about it. It's just something to help take a little bit of stress off of us, you know?
Yeah, because it just feels good. You're right. 1 week. I have to have somebody come every week. Otherwise, I have so many animals, and I live on a farm, and I bring in barn hay and on my feet, and it's awful.
There's all kinds of
anyway,
stuff. Yeah.
I
Well,
digress.
the rest of the time
I
we
don't
make
have
the
4
kids
kids,
help
but-
out. Don't worry about that. So
Oh,
it's fine.
good. But yeah, I mean, you have, and that's just one example. I mean, there's all these things like, it's as much as I love to work from home, I really do. I wouldn't want to have to go anywhere, but it does help me to go to an office and be around other people 2 days a week. But if I did it more than 2 days a week, then it would not be good for me. So it's all those negotiations that you have to have with yourself. That's really just about what works for you, and which changes and evolves.
Yeah, and that's the biggest part that I'm having to learn. It's that this is a constantly evolving beast. It's not something that what works a month ago is not going to necessarily work a year from now. And
Right.
you have to keep pivoting and keep trying to figure out what your mind is doing and what you need. And I mean, like, the biggest part of all of this is understanding the wants and needs. And what I equated to with my wife was a woman when she's pregnant. Whenever she's pregnant, she has all these cravings. And, you know, if you really look into it, those cravings is your body telling you what you need for the baby at that particular moment. And I like to think of it the same way. It's like your body, you have to listen to your body and know what your body needs and what your mind needs. Like, do you need a break here? Do you need to separate, like the work from home scenario? I work from home as well, and I know that whenever I go into the office once a week, twice a week, I come back and I'm more productive the next day. It's just to break up the monotony, and my brain's not on that single path anymore.
I think when we are people who have mental health struggles, you have to, actually, I don't even think this. I've interviewed so many experts now on how the brain works. I know that this is true. When you have that kind of a challenge or struggle, I don't know, what's the PC term these days, but you have to do things that break up the daily drudge, because that's what's healthy for your neural pathways. That's what's healthy for your brain to pivot, like you said. If you don't do that, you get into a rut. So I can't compare myself to my friend who can literally eat a bite of chocolate that's sitting in her fridge for 3 months every day. I can't relate to that, nor can I relate to the fact that she gets up and does the same thing every single day, and that works for her. It's not me. That does not work for me.
Yeah, that's the same way I am. Like, I have noticed that even in just my daily stuff, if I'm doing a workout regimen, I have to change it up day to day. You know, I can't have it set ABC. You know, my wife and I go on walks. It's not the same time every day just because of my work schedule. And I think that in and of itself has helped, where it's not the exact same thing every single day. It breaks up just a little bit. I mean, it's still the same thing, but you still have that slight differentiation to where your brain has enough time to reset.
Exactly. You could I always call it laying down healthy train tracks, different train tracks. Jump the track of the negative, because we know how to go there. That's what anxiety helps us do so well. That's what depression helps us do so well. So we got to have these changing, pivot, change the other direction, where, other people may not. That may be the thing that makes it worse for them. You know, I mean, it's like you've said and I've said, it's everybody's personal recipe for well-being.
100%. And like, even my wife's going through a lot of the same things that I have been, and we're doing our therapy and our growth separately, and it's two different ways. It's like the way that she does her therapy and the way that I do my therapy are two completely different scenarios. But whenever we come together, it's already in the past 6 months or so since she's been doing it, it's brought us closer together. And
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's not the exact same formula on either side, but it's somehow found that cohesion. And it's fascinating to me how that can happen.
Absolutely. Does your therapist ever listen to your show?
Not yet. I've been trying to avoid that as much as possible because I know I have a tendency to overshare, and it's nothing that she hasn't already heard, but I tend to be a little bit more crass and a little more direct than I would be in therapy. I watch my words a little bit more carefully. So,
Right.
but I did explain to her that we were going to be doing this today, and she was just like, well, you have to let me know whenever that comes out so I can listen to it. And I was just like, probably should have said nothing about that, but okay.
Well, I have mixed reactions with that, doing it as long as I have. I've had some therapists listen, and it was great and it was helpful. And I've had others that then go searching to see who I've interviewed, and in the middle of therapy, they get a little, I don't know, I don't want to say starstruck, certainly not by me, but by some of my guests.
Then they start
so that got a little
digging for
weird
information. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's weird. So what worked for me was working with a therapist that absolutely knows nothing about technology, wouldn't even know how to look up a podcast. That worked for me.
Hey, if it works, it works. That's the important part.
So when you start, tell our listeners how long you've been doing your show.
Off and on for about 4 years. It's gone through several different iterations. Initially, it was myself and a group of friends, and it was just us sitting around just talking, because we have all grown up. I mean, we grew up together, but we've all grown up so much that we don't get to spend time together, much less actually sit down and have a meaningful conversation. And that's
Right.
initially how it started. From there, it morphed into my wife and I, and we were doing, it was more of a child development podcast where we would talk about our struggles as parents, and not only raising our kids, but trying to raise ourselves. And then that morphed into what it is now. What it is now is me expressing myself and just trying to put out there that I might not be the atypical advocate for mental health or anything like that. I mean, certainly people look at me and they would never think that. You know, I have gauges in my ears, I have a bald head and a beard, and it's automatically, well, he's not going to be into that, he's going to dismiss it. And it's quite the opposite. It's
Right.
like, I've always been a mental health advocate, and it wasn't until I hit my rock bottom that I actually started actively pursuing it and actively trying to get better, and realizing that, okay, there is something to this, and I can make a difference in myself. And if I can make a difference in myself, maybe I can help somebody else.
I mean, that's huge. I know it has helped me in so many different ways, in so many different phases of me, you know. So I've got my angry phase where I seem to be surrounded by very narcissistic people, and I was narcissistic behaving myself because I was a lot shallower then, hence the thinking that these people were cool to hang out with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then and then you have your other phases. I've done shows, rock bottom depressed, all those things. I'm sure you've done the same thing. And then you watch yourself. I hate using the word evolve because that sounds so hoity-toity, but you watch yourself grow and change. And now I'm like, my animals and quiet are really helpful. And I don't need to say yes to every new person that comes in my life. I can take a litmus test. I didn't think you were allowed for years. Now I'm like, no, you're allowed.
Yeah. and that was a big part of it for me. I was always a people pleaser. I was always, let's do what you want to do. And
Yeah.
I mean, over the past 10 years, I really lost myself. I did not know who I was or my identity or anything like that, to the point where I developed alcoholism, and I was taking everything out on my wife, and she's my best friend, and I would absolutely never do that. And I had to take a real hard look at myself in the mirror and say, is this what I want to do going forward? Is this the example that I want to be for my children? And I completely broke down that night. This was 4 years ago now. And I just had enough. And that was the start down this path where I don't want to be that guy. I decided then that I wanted to be a good man. And I know that's kind of vague and whatnot, but that's how I look at it in my head. I want to be a good person. I want to be somebody that my kids look at and they're like, I'm proud of my dad. My dad was able to accomplish all of this, so I can do anything. That's what I want out of life.
And it's interesting too, because I'll sit and go, I got this cold, right? And so my usual cheery defenses or cheery outlook took, a bit of a dive, because I'm not feeling so great and I'm not able to do all that I want to do, because I haven't had a cold in 2 years. So I'm being a big whiny baby. I do understand what I'm saying
I do the
here,
same
but
thing. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm this awful person. I'm not getting this done. I'm not getting that done, blah, 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 blah. And what helps me now, I just realized this like yesterday, which I think is hilarious with all the therapy I've had. I just realized this yesterday. It really helps me to go, what if you're exactly where you're supposed to be right in this moment? Mm-hmm. Everything that's happened has happened exactly as it should. It was perfectly designed to get you right here. And when I said that to myself, I went, oh my God, I feel so relieved. And then went, bing, light bulb. Why don't you say that more often?
It was one of those aha moments.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. And I do the same thing. I have those moments of where I feel that catharsis because I'm letting something out, or I'm walking down a new path, as opposed to following all of the things that I used to do and all the old habits. And whenever I break that, I feel this catharsis. And in those moments, that's whenever I realize these great personal truths that I never even realized existed before that. And it's just, it's amazing and I know that sounds corny and hokey or whatever, but
no,
I thoroughly enjoy that. And it puts a giant smile on my face whenever I have those moments, because it's like, oh, I didn't even realize I thought like that. Like, that's so cool to know that's where it came from.
Yes. And I learned through last year that those of us that, do self-examine and have had struggles with our mental well-being, we're like pain warriors. And I don't mean that like, oh, let's sign up to be a pain warrior. I mean that in terms of we can handle a lot of pain, and the release from the pain, the struggle that we go through is all part of our journey. So there's nothing wrong with it or us, but we are like Olympiads at getting through stuff.
Yeah, I love that analogy. I'm gonna have to start using that one. Yeah, it's 100%. I mean, and there is truth to that, because I've seen. I hate saying it like this, because I always feel like it's turning it into like a pissing contest or something. And I'm not trying to do that, but you see people go through things that you look at and you're just like, why is that what it is? And you try to understand everybody's struggle. Right. I absolutely do that, but it's just like, okay, ultimately that's a small thing. It's like you're mad because you didn't get to go to a certain summer camp or something. Right. It's not your life literally falling apart where you develop all of these toxic traits and you yourself don't like yourself. Like that's,
and you're like Googling outpatient or inpatient treatment, mental health treatment centers, because you're just, like done.
Yeah, 100%. And I found myself at that exact place, and I heard people complaining, and I was just like, you're worried about a loan closing 24 hours later. That's what you're worried about.
Right.
And I try not to judge, but it's just I try to keep everything in perspective.
It's so funny. I said this the other day. I was judging these people who were being very judgy about other
Mhm.
people.
Mhm.
And I was standing there listening to it and getting very judgy in my head about them. And oh my gosh, really? That's what you're concerned with? Blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And then I had to like step back and go, okay, A, it's human to judge. I mean, we all do it.
Yeah, 100%.
And B, yeah, and B, hello, you're now judging the people that are judgy. Like let's look at that.
And then it becomes a vicious cycle where they're judging you,
Yes.
you're judging them, and then it just keeps going round and round and it doesn't stop.
I think the biggest thing is, like you said, like really caring about who you are as a human being out in the world and within yourself and your own mind, and paying attention. Like for me, it's a lot of paying attention to the thoughts I'm thinking, to the way I'm behaving, and I'll tell you what, I'm doing some, I stopped doing volunteer work and stuff like that last year for obvious reasons, but I've
Mhm.
started it up again. And anything that you can do to put yourself, when you can, into a position of being of service to the public, like in your face,
Mhm.
is such a great test of how judgy you're judging people who are judgy.
That's a great way to put it.
Because I'm like, wow, this person is really being rude. How quick does my back go up? And do I want to, because I know how to do it? Or can I just, okay, wax on, wax off?
And that's the hard part to learn in all of that.
Totally. Well, tell our listeners what's up for you with the show these days. And I know it'll morph into whatever versions of you are going on, but what's up with it right now after COVID?
Right now, I'm just trying to get back in the swing of things. I have a couple of guests, like personal friends, lined up. I feel like they have very interesting stories. I have one recorded with my wife where we're kind of talking about our struggles in our relationship in the past year, because we've been cooped up together for a year straight.
Yeah.
And while it was a blessing, admittedly, but there were certain struggles with that as well, because it was the two of us plus our 4 kids stuck in the same house for a year straight. So we talk a little bit about that and how we both got on the path to healing, because I mean, we had a lot of unresolved trauma that we didn't even realize we were taking out on each other until it was put under a microscope in that year.
Yeah.
So I think that ultimately that's going to be a really interesting story and put something out there that not a lot of people are doing, because a lot of people are afraid to show that vulnerability or show that their relationship isn't perfect 100% of the time. I've never had a problem with that, even in my normal life. Like I'll put all of it on Front Street. It doesn't bother me. But
Right.
yeah, I think that that's going to be really good. And I think a lot of the people that I'm going to have on the show and talk to, like my brother-in-law is one of them. He's gone through a lot of the same things that I have, and just old friends and people that I really feel like they could get something out of doing it and just talking about it, because I know that a lot of us, we don't make time to do it. And I know some of my friends are hesitant to do the therapy thing, even though I've been trying to push it since I started.
Yep.
And that's how I plan to help people. Like, even if they don't seek the actual therapy help or whatever, that they can at least come to me and have some kind of outlet, even if we just record it and it never gets released or whatever, they don't feel comfortable with it, that's
Right.
fine, but just something to let it out is ultimately what I'm looking for.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what people are craving more than ever now after last year. And, we're still in it to, a certain degree this year, but that's what people are craving, is they don't want to hear what celebrity is doing, fabulousification in Morocco and blah, blah, blah. They don't want to hear that stuff as much as we used to get into those things to sort of get a break from life. They really want to hear now, like, I want to hear how my neighbors are coping.
Yeah. And it doesn't get talked about enough, I don't think. Everybody tries to paint this rosy picture, and they try to put, like everything is just as good as possible. It's like, okay, yeah, that's great. I appreciate the positivity, and I appreciate you not trying to paint everything in a negative light. I really do. But you can't tell me that it's all positive. You can't tell me that you didn't struggle. Like there's another side of the coin that you're not talking about.
Yeah, I call that posy vomit. Like, okay, really? You're just saying the same positive thing, and I get it. You're using that to try to keep yourself up, but probably better if you stop doing that and start talking about this shit is hard.
Yeah, acknowledge the negative at least. Don't pretend like it doesn't exist, because I know whenever I did that, that was the worst possible thing I could have done. Like just pretend, everything's going to be great. Everything's going to work out. Da, 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 da. No, sometimes you have to stop and think, okay, this is shit right now. I have to figure out how to get out of it.
Totally. It's a Rubik's Cube called my mind, and my emotions are wrapped up in there. And and why am I sleeping or wanting to sleep 20 hours a day? Something's going on. I'm not going to affirmation my way out of it.
Exactly. And I would do that exact thing where I just woke up and I was already in a bad mood for no reason. I was like, I don't want to get out of bed today. And then I'd start scrolling through Facebook and see some positive affirmation, and I would try to stick with that. And for some reason, inevitably, it would get worse. I was like, okay, I can't do that anymore. I have to get up and actually do something about
reality.
it.
Yeah, the denial of reality does it. It's like alcohol or whatever, substance. You fill it with food, whatever. It's like it'll make you feel good, maybe temporarily, but it's not gonna sustain you forever, because you have to get into the shit. That's kind of what we're here for.
100%. The way I explained it to my wife, it's like it's putting a Band-Aid on your leg that's cut off.
Yes.
Like it might help a little bit of the bleeding, but ultimately your leg's still cut off. Like you have to figure out how to get past that part of it.
Absolutely. And you will have what is that called when you phantom pains? You will have phantom pains.
100%. I've had them myself,
even with that leg cut off. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well, I'm excited. I love your show. I fangirl now since I've met you. So I listen to back. I guess it was back stuff, right?
There's quite there's a pretty good back catalog on there. Some of it I'm not exactly proud of, because I was a bit of a different person at that point, but ultimately
see, you do exactly what I do. Listeners, he's doing exactly what I do. This is for real, man. When you put yourself out there like that, somebody says, oh, I listen to your back shows. It's just like what you said. You go, oh God.
Like, which one did you listen to? What bad part did you hear?
What version of me at that moment that I thought was so evolved did you hear that makes me want to vomit now when I think about it?
And it's so upsetting looking back and like thinking back. It's like, God, I really did that, didn't I? I really said that. Okay, well.
Oh, yeah, I know. And this journey of doing it really helps. It's helped me anyway with going, you know what? Okay, that's okay. You're human.
Yeah.
I'm not Buddha, So.
As much as we may aspire to be, it doesn't work out like that, unfortunately.
Well, I know you can catch your show everywhere. You can listen to podcasts. So listeners, please tune in to That Infernal Noise. Robert is amazing, funny, self-deprecating in the for reals way. So Robert, thank you so much for coming on the network and for doing what you do. I so appreciate it.
I really appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to more.
Absolutely. Listeners, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Mental Health News Radio on Mental Health News Radio Network. Always a mouthful to say that. Thanks for tuning in.
But will you ride the low, low, lows with me? Will you ride the low, low, lows with me?
One thing you can always count on at Mental Health News Radio Network and my show is that there will always be dogs around. Why? They are natural healers, excellent for your mental health. The original therapy dog Miles has something to say in just a moment. For now, please check out all of our amazing shows at mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com and all your favorite podcast apps. Until next time, I'm Kristin Sonanta Walker, and thank you for listening.
Me tonight, and I can write the low, low, lows with me. I can write the low, low, lows with me till my vision clears up perfectly. I can write the low, low, lows with me.
Good boy.
Okay, that was awesome. You're so easy to talk to. This is why you're good at podcasting.
Oh, thank you so much. I was so nervous. This is the first time I've done an actual
Really?
podcast with anybody else that wasn't my own doing. So I'm glad it wasn't on video because you could see my hands and everything shaking. So
Well, you're a natural. So there you go.